So the some of the conversations that we've had with people, some of them were difficult and some of them were easier. And as I mentioned before, the easier ones are things like, believe it or not, the most difficult one that I thought was going to be most difficult was actually not so difficult, because it was one of our sales or team managers there. And he had been with us for quite some time, and we liked him a whole lot, but towards the end we started noticing that there were some complaints, and I was kind of feeling that the relationship wasn't quite the same. But then one of the other team members, the closing manager, came to me and said to me, "I think you need to know something." I said, "What's going on?" She said, "Well, he's not with us anymore, so we'll mention his first name." She said, "Steve he's a married man, and that he's messing around with so-and-so, the other closing manager that was in our office. And this has been going on for quite some time. I know you're not aware of it, but I thought you really need to know because of the nature of the team and so on." I said, "Oh my gosh." So we questioned some of the other realtors, and apparently everybody knew about it except for us. So that conversation, believe it or not, was not a difficult conversation to have, because I knew what direction it was going to go in, that he wasn't going to be with us anymore. For that reason, and for the attitude reason too, and his how he was handling things, complaining to people about us behind us. So that's not a good thing at all, not a manager in the company. So that conversation was, "Hey, Steve, this is what's going on." He was embarrassed about it, of course, but again, it was not difficult. What he did, though, he was defensive, but not defensive about himself. He was more like, "Oh my gosh, are you I can understand you being upset about this, but are you going to let," she's not with us anymore either, so I'll mention her name, Shauna go as well. He was more concerned about his girlfriend, and because she had several kids, she actually had 6 kids, and he didn't want her to be let go because of him, because of the situation. So that was a very interesting thing, because it kind of like he wasn't defensive about him, but he was defensive about her. So what I'm trying to say, it wasn't that difficult for him, because I knew it was going to end the relationship, and that was it. There was no arguing that. It did happen, and he couldn't have argued that in any way. But the things that could be arguable are, for example, when a seller does call and complains about a particular agent. We have another agent who the seller called me, and those are very difficult conversations. She called both Lee and I, had us on a conference call, said this agent didn't do what she was supposed to do. All she was focused on was, okay, well, let me go around the house. Let me see, which, how I can decorate and rearrange this furniture and so on. And she said, "What happened to my market evaluation? What happened to my numbers and my stats and so on?" She said, "I had to kind of look up the market evaluation myself after she left, because we ran out of time, because she was more interested in decorating the house than she was in the numbers." She's a newer agent. Very detail-oriented and so on. Yep. So I had to have this difficult conversation with this realtor, and the conversation was difficult because I was leaving the next day for like a 3-week trip, and she's a very sweet girl, and everybody loves her. So this came out of, still, no matter how nice you are and how wonderful you are, if they perceive you to be not doing the job and not detail-oriented, then you're going to hear about it. But the difficult part of this was that the seller didn't want me to let her know until after we sold the home. And she wanted me to take over the sale. She said, "I want you to deal with everything, because I'm not sure if she's going to be able to handle it correctly." I said, "Well, Karen, how am I not supposed to tell her? That puts me in a difficult situation." She said, "Well, can you just put it off for a little bit until after the sale?" I don't know if she thought she was going to sabotage it or what, but we did put it off. We had the sale. I went through the whole sale process with them and so on, and then I had this conversation with my agent. Sat down with her, because we socialized several times with her. I was leaving for this trip, so I bought a bottle of wine, actually. Made it really comfortable for her, and sat down, poured myself a glass of wine, poured her a glass of wine, and I said, I'll call her Rebecca. I said, we have an issue. As you know, I think you can sense that there was something up with Karen. what happened there? And I just gave her the opportunity to explain and kind of went through some of these pointers here. And she told me, again, she was oblivious. She didn't know that there was an issue with anything. She said, I just do know that she didn't have enough time when I sat down with her. I said, well, perhaps did you spend too much time on this other stuff, that you were doing? She said, I did, and I went to get the pillows, and I did this and all that. I said, but they wanted you as a realtor, not as a stager. That's not what you're there for. So that was new to her. She is newer, and I had to explain that to her. But that was a tough conversation because it's kind of like I didn't want to say, Rebecca, here, what were you doing kind of thing. In the past, that's what I would say probably. What the heck were you doing? I mean, because when I, know that a seller is upset, then I get very upset about those things and I react that way or reacted that way. There's another agent on our team that over and over I have received calls from either buyers or sellers about his lack of communication or some issues. I had to take away several listings from him because they asked me to. That's not good for the team at all when somebody asks me, can you take over, just like they did with her. And it's funny because we're sitting in a session yesterday and I just received a call. I actually received a call from one of his past clients from a couple of years ago. They called us back. I was surprised they called us back. And when I said, oh, okay, great, then I'll put you in touch with John, let's say. And they said, well, can we have another agent on your team rather than John? I said, uh-oh. I said, what happened? And he just said to me, he said, my wife had an issue with him. There was a lot of communication issues, and there was a big personality issue also. I said, no problem. I'll put you in touch with someone else. Of course, that other agent, Sherry, went to list the property, and I got an email from the other agent who didn't get it. And he said, I want you to know that that was my listing. How did she get the listing? And I explained to him, and that one I did by email because I was out of town. I said, I do know exactly what happened with that. And I explained to him what happened. I said, they chose not to want to work with you. And then he gets very defensive. He got very defensive about what the situation is. He said, I just looked back at my texts. I got 182 texts that I sent her in a 30-day period. Seriously? I did the math, and I did that 6 texts a day, if that were the case. It's hard to know whether or not they're telling you the truth. This won't go out anywhere. So anyway, you have to kind of look at these things, but you mustn't judge. I mean, I've done that so many times, and immediately I accuse my agent when I hear something from a seller or a buyer that it is my agent's fault. I learn now to listen, to ask them the question, and then listen before I open up my big mouth and get them upset, because I did get accused one time from, as a matter of fact, that same agent who said, you're always taking the side of the client rather than us. You need to listen to us a little bit more. And that was eye-opening, and I do definitely listen to them a little bit more.
Does it feel, when you're doing this with your employees or team members, does it feel natural to you? Or are you role-playing still? Do you get used to it and it feels more natural, or are you just still role-playing that? Because I would be like you, what are you thinking,
Well, when you say role-playing, what do you mean role-playing?
Well, like when you're doing it with you're doing a confrontation with a team member, and your personality is different from the way you're doing your confrontation, okay? Because you're toning down who you are inside. Mm-hmm. Has it become natural to you now, or do you feel like this is just the role I have to play as a manager, and internally you're still kind of, but you're projecting somebody different?
Correct. The internal thing, I don't think that goes away. You still have the, the jitters and the, are they going to leave? Are they going to do with some of them that you want to leave? It's not a big deal. But no, you still have that. But I wouldn't call it a confrontation, first of all. I never enter one of these thinking this is going to be a confrontation. Who was it yesterday? I wrote this down, actually. She said, or this morning, she said, it's not an interrogation, it's a conversation. I mean, you want to have a conversation with them, not an interrogation. There was one time many years ago in an old office that we used to have, I don't know, there was an agent that she did something or other, and I called her in. Oh, it was Kelly, actually. It was Kelly, and I sat her down, and there was a lamp on the table. There was a lamp on the table. I turned on the lamp, and it seemed like she said, "What is this?" And like an interrogation. I mean, it seemed like she was in one of those police rooms or something, and I was shedding light on what was going on here. But I remember we still laugh about that. She's still with us, and it seemed like an interrogation to her. But you don't want it to seem that way, and I wouldn't call it I don't want to enter there thinking we're going to have a confrontation here. That's going to make you more nervous. I just think of it as it's going to be a conversation. I'm going to listen to their part. I'm going to say my part, and then go from there. And they may be totally justified. So I'm going to open up my mind and not look at it as, one-sided as I used to. But that conversation you must have with your friend, because it's probably you're sitting there stewing about it, right? All the time.
For me, it's, I don't know, I think we shouldn't wait until really get so bad. Those conversations. And then I think it's a communication, continual communication. If you have a relationship, always keep another relationship going. I think for me, is when I bring them in to talk to them, and I always say, I want you to listen to me, and I know this happened, and I try to understand their side too. And then I always bring myself in. I know this could happen. I know how sometimes I feel that way, and people, you might be doing a great job, but then sometimes it's miscommunication, or I think we need to do better. And then sometimes when they get a little defensive or something, you know what I tell them? I do care about you. Otherwise, I won't even talking to you. I mean, that's what I do. I mean, I always do that. If I don't care about you, I won't be talking to you. So that's why I care enough to talk to you, and I see great potential in you. So I want you to listen to me, and then just see what we could do better. And you know what, people, you always, I heard more than once you say, maybe they're going to leave. We need to I got over that long time ago. I tell my partner, Barry, all the time, if they're going to leave, they need to leave. I can't stop anything for them to stay. Because, really, they have thinking about leaving. They already have set the mind to go. You cannot keep them from, I have about 3 of my biospecialists, they left, and then they come back. And then they are the raving fan, and some of them, mine is staying for over 20 years, 15 years, 17 years, Yeah, 24 years, one of the biospecialists, and then 19 years, 17 years, and then 10 years. A couple of them left and come back, and they are more raving fan than anything.